We'll now move to question time, and I call Senator Sharma.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, despite both your own and the Treasurer's attempts to blame the shocking national accounts figures on interest rates, independent analysis from the RBA and market economists has revealed those claims to be false. ABS data shows inflation wiped out 4.4 percentage points of household income gains last financial year, compared to higher interest rates eroding 1.3% and increased taxes reducing real income by a further 1.1%, according to analysis by former RBA economist Jonathan Kearns, who said the erosion by inflation is greater than that of interest rates. Minister, will you correct the record for the Treasurer and acknowledge that inflation and higher taxes are eroding household incomes by 3 times as much as interest rates?
Thank you, Senator Sharma. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Sharma for the question. I think the Treasurer and I both have made it very clear about the fact that we inherited an inflation number with a 6 in front of it when we came to government, and that has moderated in welcome ways to having a 3 in front of it now. And so I'm sure Senator Sharma would have been most concerned about the escalating inflation challenge that we inherited, that we have actually responded to through our economic plan. And our economic plan is around moderating inflation, ensuring that we can provide some cost of living relief to households without adding to the inflation challenge, and ensuring that we're getting the budget in much better shape. And the bank has made it clear, the Reserve Bank has made it clear that the 2 surpluses that we are delivering, one that we've already delivered and one soon to be finalised, is actually helping with the inflation challenge in the economy. So I don't think there is anything surprising in the sense that we have outlined that price pressures across the world, inflation, global uncertainty and interest rates are being reflected in the national accounts. Now, you can choose to selectively, I guess, single out one element of what we've said, but we have said price pressures, global uncertainty and interest rates are being reflected in the national accounts. And if it wasn't for our economic plan, whilst all of those opposite called to cut spending and slash and burn at budget time, we would have seen a much different set of results, and that would have seen our economy in recession, which the only people in the country that seem to want a recession is those opposite. Yep, those opposite.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sharma, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, to use your own words from Monday, the national accounts showed that growth across the Australian economy is slow, it's weak, it's soft, and it is no secret that growth is weak because interest rates have been lifted. Minister, while you seek to blame interest rates, what role has the 6.3% collapse in productivity under Labor had on the economy?
Thank you, Senator Sharma. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, it is surprising to me. It shouldn't actually be a surprise to me that the opposition come in here and they raise all these concerns about inflation when it's currently got a 3 in front of it, and when they were in charge it had a 6 in front of it. And on productivity, President, on productivity, the fact that we saw the worst productivity outcomes in more than 4 decades under their government.
Senator Birmingham, I've called you. Please continue, Minister.
And as I said on Monday, I would look forward to the support from the opposition for things like digital ID, for things like Jobs and Skills Australia, for other measures like the Future Made in Australia, like all of the effort that we are putting in, like our housing programs, skills, training, universities accord, all targeted to a long-term growth plan for this country, and all things that those opposite have showed either no interest in or have opposed.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sharma, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, when the ABS last released monthly economic data in August, you proudly claimed the figures were evidence that our economic plan is working. With the latest national accounts figures showing that productivity has plummeted, disposable income has crashed and the economy is in an entrenched household recession, will you repeat the claim that your economic plan is working?
Thank you, Senator Sharma. Minister Gallagher.
our economic plan is supporting economic growth in the Australian economy. Well, not much. So there's an acknowledgement there, Senator Birmingham, that our economic plan is supporting economic growth. And if you were in charge, with your $315 billion worth of cuts, we would be in a recession, and while it might be politically convenient for you to lobby for that and to argue for it, it would be a disaster for millions and millions of families around this country. Now, we would prefer, and our plan is about avoiding recession rather than responding to cleaning one up afterwards, which is something that you would seek to be advocating for. In the policies that you have put forward, $315 billion cuts to budget spending that's being outlined by the federal opposition, and an acknowledgement today from the Leader of the Opposition in this chamber that our plan is supporting growth in the economy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. Families in Western Australia have welcomed news that the Albanese government will create a new minimum age for access to social media, as many parents are increasingly worried about the potential harm social media can cause to children's mental health and well-being. Can the Minister share the Albanese government's approach to keeping Australians, and particularly children, safe?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and my thanks to Senator Ghosh for the question. And I know those of us on this side, and Senator Ghosh amongst them, have an ongoing interest in this area. We know it's important to the people of Western Australia. It's important to people across this country and throughout our community. And I hope all of us in this place can agree that the safety and mental health of our children is paramount. And we all know that parents are looking for real solutions to their concerns about harmful online environments and addictive behaviour on social media. We all know that from our own experience and from the conversations that we have in our communities with parents and grandparents and young people alike. That is why the Prime Minister has announced that the Albanese government will be creating a new minimum age for access to social media, and we will bring legislation forward before the end of the year, and I look forward to those opposite supporting it. But of course, this is not the only thing we are doing or that we have done. We have quadrupled funding for the E-Safety Commissioner. We have fast-tracked the review of the Online Safety Act, which will report next month. We have funded digital literacy programs for every school with the Alana and Madeline Foundation. We have supported the E-Safety Commissioner to develop new mandatory industry codes to protect children from online pornography. You may scoff at this. You may scoff at this, Senator Henderson, but I think actually ensuring we have legislation to protect children from online pornography is a good thing. We have passed legislation to ban the creation and distribution of deepfake pornography, and we are holding big tech to account because platforms and online services have a responsibility for the safety of their users. We have amended the government's basic online safety expectations to reflect the expectation the community have of these platforms.
Senator Ghosh, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. South Australia has released a report by the former Chief Justice of Australia, the Honourable Robert French AC, outlining a legislative vehicle to ban children under the age of 14 from accessing social media. Why is it important that we work with the states and territories to build on South Australia's approach with national laws on a minimum age to access social media?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. And Senator Ghosh, given his professional history, understands the importance of getting the law right in this area, and also understands this is a challenging area to regulate. That is why governments across the Commonwealth have come together on this important issue of protecting children, and it is important that we all work together. We do support appropriate age limits for social media. We have said we will legislate to enforce this, and that legislation will be informed by the report to which Senator Ghosh refers, which was that of the former Chief Justice Robert French, as well as by engagement with National Cabinet, engagement with the E-Safety Commissioner. We thank South Australia, including Premier Malinowskis, for his work, and we acknowledge the contribution of Premier Minns too. But ultimately, the issue needs national leadership. because otherwise we will see Australia with different laws in each state and territory that will not keep children online safe, and we want to ensure we have an effective solution.
Second supplementary.
Thank you. The Albanese government clearly takes this important issue seriously. Can the minister please explain how these laws are focused on protecting children from harm?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. And Senator Ghosh, you're right. The focus of this is how do we protect children from harm. These are serious matters and they demand serious reforms, and the reforms that the Prime Minister has announced are groundbreaking. And we are proceeding down this path because we want to help parents protect their children. We want to help parents protect their children from threats in the online environment. And for too long, Australians have had to navigate these complex and concerning issues far too alone. I would make this point that for 9 long years those opposite failed to keep up with the technological changes in the digital world, with regulation and protection in this parliament and by government. Now they decide it is urgent. You know what I would say to them, why don't you, instead of your relentless negativity, which is on display yet again as we speak, actually work with us, actually work to ensure the parliament can act.
Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment, Senator McAllister. Minister Plibersek yesterday tried to equate the blocking of a $1 billion, near 1,000-job McPhillamys gold mine tailings dam with a proposal to relocate a go-kart track. Given Regis Resources had already spent $200 million on the mine by the time of Ms Plibersek's decision, and to help us better understand the accuracy of the Minister's attempted comparison, could the Minister tell us what were each of the equivalent figures for the go-kart track?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister McAllister.
Thank you very much, President, and thank you for the question. Well, of course, it is the case that Minister Lee was required to make a decision under the very same Act that Minister Plibersek was required to deal with in the case of the McPhillamys mine that has been the subject of so much discussion in this chamber. And there are, in fact, a very great number of similarities between the two decisions. So Minister Plibersek made her decision based on the advice of the same traditional owner group as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Wiradjuri Traditional Owners Central West Aboriginal Corporation. She made the same type of decision, a Section 10 decision under the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act. And I would observe that that Act has been in place since the 1980s and operative under a range of governments of different flavours. Minister Plibersek makes the point that she made her decision essentially based on the same reasons as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition when she made her decision. And at that time she spoke about, and I speak now of Ms Ley, the cultural significance for the Wiradjuri people in contributing to local Aboriginal narratives, songlines, ceremonies and cultural heritage. And she made the decision
Minister
to protect the
please
site.
resume your seat. Senator Duniam.
Sorry, on relevance, a point of order on relevance, President. I asked specifically how much money was spent on the go-kart track and how many jobs came from it in my question.
Senator Duniam, I'd also refer you to your preamble if you have it written down, and I would say that the Minister's being directly relevant to the question. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Thanks very much, President.
Senator Ruston. Order. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Watt, that includes you. And Senator McKenzie, it does not need a response from you. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Of course, interestingly, Senator Duniam, the two sites are very close together, less than 50 kilometres apart from one another. And it is the case.
Order.
It is the case that not everyone agreed with the decision taken by Ms Ley at the time. Thank you.
The time has expired. Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. At the time of the go-kart track decision, there was a petition with over 10,000 signatures from locals to stop the project, In contrast, Labor's Section 10 decision, proposed by less than 20 people, has left those same locals furious and at a loss as to how they'll continue to live and work in the area. How can the minister so offensively equate the economic blow to the Blaney community with the decision to prevent a go-kart track from being built?
Thank you, Senator Dunning. And Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, there are a number of assumptions in the question put to me about the statement made by Ms Plibersek that I simply don't accept. I will say this. Ms Plibersek has repeatedly indicated
Senator
that
Ruston. Please continue.
Ms Plibersek has repeatedly...
Order. Order. Senator... Order. Senator McGrath and Senator Ruston. Senator Ruston, I've called you 4 times. And Senator Wong. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Pressure. Under so much pressure.
Order. 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 Order across the chamber. Order. I am still waiting. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Thanks, President. Well, the point that Minister Plibersek has made is that her obligation is to apply the law. And what is extraordinary is that Mr Dutton, Leader of the Opposition, has indicated that he is indifferent to the law on these questions, that he will rule these projects in or out based on how he feels about them. Now, for the benefit of the chamber, I can outline some of the processes that are required. Essentially, Aboriginal heritage is the responsibility of state governments, but this Act exists to protect Aboriginal cultural heritage.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you. Given the minister has demonstrated complete indifference to the people of Blaney and the decisions created a loss of nearly 1,000 jobs in the Blaney area, and given she hasn't been able to tell us how many jobs a go-kart track actually creates, what is the actual comparison between a go-kart track and its impact on the community and a gold mine? How can the minister justify this decision?
Order. Order. Senator Watt and Senator Duniam. The question's been asked. I'm waiting to call the minister. Minister McAllister.
Very much. Well, the very obvious connection, Senator Duniam, is that both sites were the subject of a Section 10 application under a piece of legislation that has been in place since the 1980s. And the way that it works is this. The department provides advice to the minister on the application and its merits. And this includes providing a summary of the application, a map of the area and its boundary, a detailed analysis of the available evidence, an assessment of the evidence against the relevant criteria and any other matters of relevance. And submissions from the applicant and those received from any other interested party throughout the course of the evaluation period are also summarised and presented to the minister. And procedural fairness is carefully observed in the processing of applications made under this Act, and in advice to the minister, the department also outlines how the principles of procedural fairness have been observed.
Minister.
And
the time
those
for
are the
answering has
similarities.
expired. Just a moment, Senator Whish-Wilson. I draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the enclosed gallery of a parliamentary delegation from Indonesia, led by the Honourable Nomar Parta. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment and Water, Senator McAllister. Minister, the federal government's own Threatened Species Scientific Committee has recently estimated there are just 40 to 120 Maugean skates left on this planet, provided preliminary advice that the skate be uplisted to critically endangered, and stated very clearly that salmon production in the skate's last known home, Macquarie Harbour in Tasmania, poses a catastrophic risk to the survival of the skate. Minister, does your government accept the findings made by the committee, that industrial salmon farming is the single biggest threat to the survival of the Maugean skate in its natural habitat?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator McAllister.
Thanks very much for the question. Of course, the Australian government is deeply committed to ensuring that the Maugean skate does not go extinct under our watch. And we know that this is a species of high risk of extinction, as you have alluded to in your question, and that substantially reduced water quality in Macquarie Harbour is the primary contributing factor. Now, the Minister is aware of these issues. You will know, I think, because we have talked about it in estimates, that on the 12th of October the Minister held a roundtable discussion in Devonport with industry, with government, with other stakeholders regarding Macquarie Harbour aquaculture. And she wrote to the Tasmanian Premier, Minister Rockcliffe, on the 6th of November in 2023 and provided really clear information to him about her responsibilities under the EPBC Act with regards to salmon farming in that harbour. Now, the Minister has been asked to reconsider a decision made back in 2012 under the EPBC Act about marine farming in Macquarie Harbour, including whether current farming operations require further approvals under national environment law. And the department is rigorously assessing a very large volume of information relevant to that decision, and I understand will soon provide Minister Plibersek with advice. Macquarie Harbour will need long-term support to recover, and the Australian Government is actively working with the Tasmanian Government, with technical experts and community stakeholders to achieve that. But we also acknowledge that in the short term there are things that we can do, and you will be aware that in September last year the Minister announced $2.15 million to urgently initiate a captive breeding program ahead of hot summer conditions.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whish-Wilson, first supplementary.
Yeah, thank you, President. As you point out, Minister, it's been 221 days since Minister Plibersek was ordered to reconsider that 2012 decision to expand salmon farming. Yet evidence at a Administrative Appeals Tribunal hearing last week revealed the Minister doesn't yet have a brief on this decision. Minister, why has it taken 221 days, and are you kicking the can down the road till after the next election?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, sorry, there's some laughing on the other side of the chamber on a reasonably serious question.
Order. Order. Please continue, Minister.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, President. This is an issue that requires quite serious consideration of substantial volumes of information. It's an issue that is of real concern to industry and of real interest and importance to industry and to many conservationists in the local community as well. And the consequence of that, in part, is that over 2,500 submissions have been received by the Minister. The government is carefully considering the information and the scientific advice that it has obtained to ensure that there is a proper, legally robust decision, and I think you will understand that that will take time to do that properly.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whish-Wilson, second supplementary.
Not sure the skate's got time, Minister. Minister, when launching the Threatened Species Action Plan in 2022, Minister Plibersek stated, "I will not shy away from difficult problems or accept environmental decline and extinction as inevitable." Minister, if you want to prevent extinctions, at some point you will have to do something that will prevent extinctions. Will you listen to the scientific advice that's been before you for months and stop salmon farming in Macquarie Harbour and give the skate the best possible chance of survival?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, I already emphasised in my answer to your first supplementary question that the approach the Minister is taking is to carefully consider the information and the scientific advice to ensure that there is a proper and legally robust decision at the end of this process. But you are right that there are things that we can do now in advance of that decision, and we are working to ensure the protection of the skate. I spoke earlier of the $5.7 million that is being invested to help protect the skate and improve the health of the harbour. That includes a $2.1 million program to establish this captive breeding program. And we are pleased to report that that program is helping save the Maugean Skate, and more than 19 baby skates have hatched and over 100 new eggs have been laid in captivity.
Senator Whish-Wilson, you've asked
More
the
eggs
question.
are on track to start hatching, and scientists are planning for the skates born in captivity to be returned to their rehabilitated habitat
The time
in
for
the harbour.
answering has expired. Senator Giacone.
Thanks a lot, President. Yes. G'day, everyone. It's Wednesday. Excellent. There we go. Now, President, my question is to my good friend, the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. Especially this bloke here. Now, at the last election, Minister, Federal Labor promised to get wages moving again and support Australian workers. Now, we know that low wages and insecure work were a deliberate design feature of the Coalition's economic plan when they were last in government. We also know that these policies led to high levels of industrial action and rising cost of living pressures on Australian households. After a decade of deliberate wage stagnation and attacks on workers, how is the Albanese Labor government's policy agenda supporting Australian workers to earn more and keep more of what they earn, while also keeping industrial action low?
Thank you, Senator Giacone. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Giacone. I can see why you were so excited to ask that question, because there is good news for Australian workers and Australian businesses arising from the Albanese government's workplace reforms. The Albanese Labor government is helping working people in Australia earn more and keep more of what they earn. And after a decade of low wages being a deliberate design feature of the Coalition's economic policy, this government, this Labor government, is getting wages moving again, creating more secure jobs, making workplaces safer and closing the gender pay gap, all while keeping industrial action down. And Senator Henderson, I'm sorry to hear that all of that good news disappoints you so much. Because of our agenda, wages growth is back. Oh, so unhappy.
Minister
so
Watt,
unhappy.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Order, order, order. Senator Henderson.
On the point of order, President, the point of order is that you are completely out of order by imputing my reputation by misrepresenting me. I was sitting here doing nothing.
Your seat. There's no point of order. Senator Henderson. Order. Order. Senator Henderson, I note you are perfectly within your rights to call a point of order, which you do fairly regularly. I am also the President of the Senate, and when I ask you to resume your seat and stop speaking, that is what I also expect. Minister Watt, please continue.
What?
Senator McGrath, if there wasn't so much disorder in the chamber, you would have heard me say there is no point of order. Now, please resume your seat. Please resume your seat. Minister Watt.
Well, if opposition members are going to object and complain about our policies, we're going to point that out to you. We're going to point. I mean, how many glass jaws are there on that side of the chamber when we want to talk about the fact that
Minister Watt, I am going to draw you to the question.
Sure. It is unfortunate that that side of the chamber feels so upset and so disappointed every time we talk about the fact that our workplace reforms are delivering higher wages, more secure jobs, safer workplaces, closing the gender pay gap, all while keeping industrial action down. I don't know why you're so sad about that, but every time we talk about it, you arc up, you cry, you complain. It's very, very puzzling. Because of our agenda, wages growth is back. As I say, the gender pay gap is at its lowest level ever. There are more people in jobs and industrial action is low. In fact, in the last quarter of the previous government, industrial action was far higher than it is now, and that is because Labor has built a cooperative workplace relations system to replace the conflict-driven model that we inherited. We've closed loopholes which are benefiting workers and also benefiting businesses, stopping them from being undercut by rogue competitors.
Minister, thank you. The time has expired. Senator Giacone, first supplementary.
And as always, thank you very much, Minister, for that answer. Now, I do note that the Liberals and the Nationals have repeatedly voted against the Albanese Labor government's policies to support Australian workers from earning more and keeping more what they earn. Given the Coalition's track record of attacking workers' rights and wages, how are the government's reforms supporting workers and the economy, and what is the biggest challenge, Minister, to implementing these very, very important reforms?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you again, Senator Ciccone. And we already know that Mr Dutton and Senator Cash and all of their colleagues over there are out there running scare campaigns against higher wages and more cooperative workplaces. It wasn't that long ago that we had Senator Cash out there saying that Labor's workplace law changes would close down Australia. Sadly for Senator Cash, Australia is open, it's functioning, and you know what? It's delivering higher wages, more jobs, reducing the gender pay gap and reducing industrial action all at the same time. Now, we also know that Mr Dutton has been telling big employers in Western Australia that he will hit Control-X on his computer and cut the rights that we've promised to workers and their unions. But what will that actually mean for the Western Australian economy? Because under this government, employment growth in Western Australia is at a record high of 3.6%. Under the Morrison government, it was 1.6%. Wages in Western Australia have been growing faster under this government than under the Morrison government, and working days lost to industrial disputes in Western Australia have fallen under this government.
Has expired. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Again, Minister, I know a lot of frontline workers and people in retail and hospitality rely on those increased wages. Now, I do note that the Coalition have not ruled out reprising their low wages policy, but have promised to take a suite of targeted repeals to the next election. Why is getting wages moving and fostering cooperative workplaces so important, Minister, and why is the government being committed to strengthening the rights and entitlements of every single Australian worker?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Watt.
They do get upset when we talk about workplace reform, don't they? They do get upset when we talk about wages rising, more secure jobs, lower gender pay gap and also, importantly, lower industrial action. And unlike those opposite, who thrive on conflict, this government is focused on bringing businesses and workers together to ease cost of living pressure, deliver higher wages and more productivity for businesses. We know the Coalition had an anti-worker and anti-union agenda when they were in government. They deliberately kept wages low, they kept workers in insecure work, and they refused to fix the bargaining system, leading to more industrial action. And we know the Coalition have already committed to ripping away rights for casual workers and taking away the right for workers to stop working for free with our right to disconnect, scrapping casual worker rights, scrapping the right to disconnect. They're on the record saying it. We had Senator Hume out there saying that adding more rights for workers is, quote, unreasonable, and that's because the Coalition have a plan to take a targeted package of repeals to the next election.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, Senator McCarthy. A few years ago, sheep farmers had limited access to an Australian-manufactured foot rot vaccine called Custom R Parlous. That was highly effective in reducing and managing foot rot, but its use was discontinued by the APVMA. It was also cheaper and much more effective than the single overseas manufactured vaccine now available to Australian farmers to manage this debilitating disease, which costs the industry more than $83 million a year. Will the Minister please explain why the Australian manufactured vaccine is no longer available to Australian sheep farmers?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister McCarthy.
Sure. Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Hanson, for the question. I will get some further details specifically on that. I do understand that we are talking about in relation to the APVMA as an independent regulator, that it administers scientifically rigorous risk-based regulatory system for the ag and veterinary chemicals, and we have confidence that the APVMA decisions are based on the best available science to improve safety outcomes for Australians. I'm certainly happy to get more details in regard to your specific question.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Just further to inform you then, and I appreciate that, that you weren't warned about my question before this. One sheep farmer from Victoria has informed me the overseas foot rot vaccine cost her $76,000 in 1 year, along with approximately $50,000 in labour costs treating her sheep. I'm also informed that a process to fully register the Australian vaccine is facing significant delays and that this farmer's pleas to the Minister and Prime Minister have gone unanswered.
Thank you, Senator
Will
Hanson.
the Minister—
Senator Hanson, it's time. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you.
Minister Wong.
To give leave to finish the question.
Senator Hanson, please finish your question.
Well, I just wanted to ask the Minister, would she explain the process has been delayed and the detriment of farmers' profitability and the welfare of Australian sheep?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Senator Hanson, thank you for the question. Obviously, you've given a specific question that I don't have an answer to for you in regards to that particular farmer, but I am happy to get that from the Minister as soon as possible.
Thank you, Minister McCarthy. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. But also considering the untold damage to the sheep industry being done by Labor's ban on live exports on dubious animal welfare grounds, will the government provide the funding and support necessary to ensure this Australian manufactured vaccine is made fully available to the industry as soon as possible to address the real animal welfare issue?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister McCarthy.
Oh, I certainly reject the premise of the question in terms of our legislation to ban live exports, Senator Hanson. We have done that in absolute consideration of animal welfare across the country. What I will do, though, as I've said, President, is get the answers to your particular request on the farmer.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, a few weeks ago, APRA ordered Cbus and BusQ Super to review their governance arrangements, given recent allegations on serious misconduct within the CFMEU, which is a shareholder of both Cbus's trustee, United Super and BusQ. Minister, does the government think it's appropriate for CFMEU to remain shareholders in superannuation entities controlling over $100 billion in members' savings?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, and I thank Senator Bragg for the question. And as Senator Bragg's question indicated, this matter is under consideration by APRA, which is the regulator of superannuation in this country. And you know, we would. Mechanisms are in place for the regulator to manage and investigate those matters, and if they think there is anything that they need to respond to, I'm sure that they will. You know, I think Senator Bragg's war on super, well, that's what this is about. He's obsessed with it. He's obsessed with his war on super and undermining. Well, he can dress it up in any way he likes. He is well aware that APRA is looking into any matters. I'm sure they're engaging closely with Cbus as they investigate these matters. But that is really, he's using that as a shield to continue to undermine compulsory super in this country. That's what he's doing. He does it as every single opportunity, and if it's industry super he can attack, then he'll go after them. Industry super in this country plays an important role in managing and enhancing millions of Australians' retirement incomes to ensure that they are able to retire with dignity and their hard-earned work that they do through their working lives is rewarded through the superannuation system. We have a regulatory system here that manages and regulates the superannuation industry. They've already indicated that they are working with Cbus and having a look at some of the concerns that have been raised, and I would encourage Senator Bragg to allow them to do their job. And I have no doubt that he will be speaking or questioning APRA at estimates on this very subject.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
Time will tell. Time will tell. On 29 August, the CFMEU Administrator Mark Irving KC forced all three of the CFMEU appointed trustees off the Cbus board. CFMEU appointed directors still make up half the eight-member BusQ board, and BusQ recently launched a federal court challenge to APRA's request that they conduct a review of their own arrangements, describing the licensee conditions as unreasonable. Will the government take action so that fund members can be better served by more independent directors on super fund boards, rather than them being controlled by unions? And if not, why not?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister. Order. Order. Senator Ayres. Senator Ayres, come to order. Senator McGrath, come to order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. The Albanese government expects all superannuation funds to act in the financial interests of their members. I think there's been long debates about governance of superannuation funds in this country. And that's why we have APRA here, to ensure that the best interests of members, that responsibility is met by superannuation funds. On this side of the chamber, we acknowledge the valuable role that unions have played in establishing, in advocating and arguing for superannuation in this country, and we believe they have a right to sit at the table in the interests of their members and the funds that those funds administer on their members' behalf. We are not, Senator Bragg, again, your war on superannuation is all that seems to drive you in this chamber, but it is a significant financial asset for millions of Australian workers in this country.
Has expired. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
Be improved. Last Friday, APRA took legal action against First Super co-chair and CFMEU official Michael O'Connor, alleging he breached his director duties by using members' savings to bankroll a union official salary. According to 2022-2023 disclosures, First Super gave $2.5 million to the CFMEU. What is the government's plan to ensure such misappropriation of funds is not systemic?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we expect the regulator to do the job that they are charged with doing. They need to ensure that superannuation funds meet the highest standards of governance, act in the best interests of their members, and the independent regulator has the mandate to uphold these standards. So your question and the fact that you have referred to APRA shows that we have the system in place to manage concerns, and if complaints or cases are raised, then APRA should respond to them. That's the system that this parliament has put in place. APRA, I think, has a very, very strong reputation in enforcing and upholding those standards, and I have no doubt they will continue to do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration, Senator Watt. Over the weekend, I visited a group of Sri Lankan Tamil refugees protesting in the electorate of Tangni, grieving the death by suicide of 23-year-old Mano Yogalingam and calling an end to mandatory offshore detention. The recent reports by the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre reveal the suffering of refugees held in offshore detention, subjected to uncertainty, medical neglect and trauma. On page 141 of the 2023 Australian Labor Party platform, there is a mandate to reintroduce the 90-day rule in the Migration Act. Independent MP Kalia Tink has introduced a refreshed private members' bill calling a 90-day time limit on detention for people seeking asylum. Minister, will the government support Ms Tink's bill?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Payman. Can I first say what an outstanding Member of Parliament Sam Lim is? The member for Tangni, and I am aware that there has been a pretty long-standing protest outside his office. The protest and the rally that Senator Payman was referring to has been occurring outside Mr Lim's office for quite some time, and I think it has been obstructing members of the public from obtaining services from that office. But I'm sure that won't stop Mr Lim from doing the excellent job that he has been as a representative member in the electorate of Tangni. I'm also aware that many of the community members who have been at that protest are members of the Tamil community, and of course we respect their right to protest. And I know that in at least some cases their protest activity has been motivated by the recent tragic suicide of a Tamil asylum seeker, and of course it goes without saying that our thoughts are with the family and friends of that man. who did take his life on the 28th of August. We have provided a visa pathway for thousands of people who were neglected by the former government. We understand that when we came to office, there were several thousand people who had gone through what was known as the fast-tracking process. Their asylum claims had not been properly dealt with and in many cases were rejected, but then they weren't given any security as to their future situation. They were told they couldn't stay in Australia, but they also weren't sent back to their originating country, so they have been in limbo for more than a decade. This is one of the many challenges that we inherited from the former government in the immigration portfolio. Of course, it's now a matter of record that when Mr Dutton oversaw that portfolio as Home Affairs Minister, it was a broken system. That's been the finding of several reviews. The issues that Senator Payman is referring to are some that we're dealing with right now, and I know Mr Burke is giving it his full attention.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Minister, the remaining 8,550 people failed by the fast-track process who feel left behind and forgotten are still working, paying taxes, attending school and rebuilding their lives. Will the minister grant permanent residency to all people seeking asylum failed by fast-track via a mechanism similar to the temporary protection conversion to resolution of status visas?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, as I say, the former government did leave thousands of people in limbo for years with no resolution in sight. The numbers were given by Senator Payman, and it's of course a very large number. But since taking office a couple of years ago, our government has taken a different approach to this matter. We've provided resolution of status visas for anyone with a temporary protection visa or safe haven enterprise visa before the 14th of February 2023 and who have been found to be owed protection. This has provided a visa pathway for thousands of people neglected by the former government. Of the 6,352 people who were not found to be genuine refugees but are still lawfully in the community, only 167 are without work rights and access to Medicare. So, as I say, the Minister for Home Affairs, Minister Burke, is working through the failed fast-track cohort on a case-by-case basis. It's a large job to be done as part of fixing our broken migration system, but it's one that Minister Burke is committed to.
Senator Payman, second supplementary.
We can't keep blaming the opposition for the decade. I speak from the heart on this matter as my late father was in detention upon arriving in Australia and described the horrors back in 1999. Considering the documented evidence of suffering and human rights violation in offshore detention centres, will the minister finally commit to an independent investigation into these facilities and their operations?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Well, Senator Payman, I think you yourself acknowledged that there were several thousand people who had gone through the failed fast-track process, and that is a situation that we are dealing with. So I think it's entirely appropriate to point out the work that was required to deal with this issue when we came to office and that we inherited from the former government, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. I've already pointed out. Senator Shoebridge, if you want to ask a question, feel free to get up on your feet or get a question up. But this is Senator Payman's question, and maybe she's entitled to an answer to the question. So our government has taken a different approach to that of the former coalition government. As I say, we've provided resolution of status visas for anyone with a temporary protection visa or safe haven enterprise visa before the 14th of February 2023 and have been found to be owed protection. That is a very different approach to what was taken by the former government. It does remain an issue for many people in our community, and it's an issue that Minister Burke is working through.
Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister for Women and Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Minister, you've spoken before about the Albanese government's commitment to paid parental leave, a policy that Labor introduced and is now expanding and modernising. Labor's commitment to PPL is also about valuing the important work of caring for babies, supporting families to share that care, and reducing the long-term economic impact of time out of the workforce, especially for women. Can the minister please outline why the government is committed to paid parental leave and why adding superannuation to PPL is a priority?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator O'Neill for such a good question, an important question as we continue to drive economic equality for women across this country and for Senator O'Neill's long advocacy in this area. I acknowledge that today. And when we came to government, President, we had a long list of things that had been left undone or ignored as it related to women in this country. And we started on implementing changes and announcing new measures, and one of those was about expanding paid parental leave, which of course the former Labor government brought in over a decade ago. It always takes Labor governments to do these important social changes that drive outcomes for women. So we've expanded that to 26 weeks by 2026, and we're seeing those increase in weeks come on board this year. We've introduced reserve leave for each parent. This will reach 4 weeks by the end of 2026, with the remaining weeks shared between parents however they may decide, and that's about making it flexible for families. But an important part that we hadn't addressed was paying superannuation on paid parental leave, something that had been advocated for and campaigned for years, the only employment condition that didn't have super paid on it. And we put that in place in this year's budget, due to come in to the 1st of July next year. Now, this is an important change to paid parental leave, but it's an important statement from the government about the value that we place on parents taking time out of the paid workforce to care for the next generations, whether that be the birth parent or the non-birth parent of that child. We want that condition to be flexible, but we don't want people to pay an additional penalty because they're doing that. This is work we value. It is important work, and we know that all the data shows women pay a penalty for taking time out on it.
Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. How is the government supporting the retirement savings of mothers and parents caring for their children? And are you aware of any alternative positions?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator O'Neill. I am aware of an alternative position. We've heard, and it has Senator Bragg's hands all over it, doesn't it? It has his hands all over it. It's no real surprise, after a failure to do anything on PPL or strengthen super or put super on paid parental leave, that the opposition announces that they don't think it's that important. I don't think it's that important. Why not? Oh, that's right, choice. We always hear that. It's always about choice. This is about ensuring that women don't retire with 25% less than men at the same age. This is about ensuring that we are sending a message that when you are caring for children, you deserve to have superannuation paid on that leave. And every answer from those opposite is about raiding your super. COVID, raid your super. Housing, raid your super. And now
Minister,
PPL, raid your super.
Order. Order. Senator Scarr and Senator Bragg. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. And it's really disappointing to hear, the voices in this chamber articulating once again that the opposition are letting down Australian women. Now, the Liberals will take any chance they can get to undermine the super system. We saw that in the pandemic, and they want to do it again for housing too. How is this approach from the Liberals and the Nationals the latest attack on women's economic security?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill, for that question. Well, it is women's economic security being attacked here. We have report after report, women who have fought for decades to get super on PPL, experts who have repeatedly recommended super on PPL, and challenging that evidence that shows there's a direct link between unpaid care and women's retirement incomes.
Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Order across the chamber, but particularly on my left. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. And I'm going to say it again. This mob over there have never met a problem they don't think the super can fix. So in the COVID times it was raid your super, look after yourself, and a lot of women did that and they're now behind. Housing pressure. Raise your super by the House, despite all the experts saying that's ridiculous. Experiencing violence, raid your super. Go and raid all that super you don't have. And now, super on PPL, raid your super. That's your answer to everything.
Senator McGrath and Senator Hughes. But Senator McGrath in particular, I've had to call you to order a number of times since question time started. You are out of order. Senator Rennick.
My question.
Order. Senator Watt, equally, I've had to call you to order. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. The Albanese government has lent $100 million to Ampol for 200 battery charging stations to expand electric vehicle fast charging infrastructure nationwide. If, as Senator Wong claims, renewables are cheaper, why is it necessary for the Albanese government to give taxpayer funds to a company that recently reported a half-year profit of $235 million in order to subsidise electric vehicle charging stations?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, nearly 1 in 10 new cars purchased is now an EV, Senator Rennick, and that's up from just 2% under the former coalition government. And the thing is that those consumers are making a choice, and the choice that they are making requires them to have access to charging facilities. Now, under this government, we think that's important because we know that when you purchase an EV, there are substantial savings available to you on fuel.
Order.
And it's why, under this government, the number of EV charging locations has nearly doubled. In 16 months, it's to around 900 as of March 2024. We've also seen a 131% increase in ultra-fast charging locations. We want to make sure that existing industries, existing businesses, existing stations are part of that transition. So we announced in August, as your question points out, that CEFC capital will be available to finance a range of clean energy technology measures at Ampol service stations across the country, and that is to accelerate the decarbonisation of its operations, to kick-start its biofuel development and to drive down national transport emissions. And the thing that you need to understand, Senator Rennick, is that all of these investments, all CEFC investments, are made with the expectation of a positive, risk-based financial return. And it's a program that has actually been running for more than a decade. It's a legacy, in fact, of the last Labor government, and it's been very successful and an important institution that's been able to leverage significant new capability and capacity in the Australian economy. It's a good application of the power of government. And I'm surprised for someone who's interested in how the economy develops.
Minister McAllister, the time for answering has expired. Senator Rennick, first supplementary.
How many tonnes of electric vehicle lithium battery waste does the Albanese government forecast Australia to produce in the next decade? Where will it be recycled and what will the cost of that recycling be?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister McAllister.
Minister,
order.
Right. Thanks very much. Senator, we're in a period—
Minister McAllister, please resume your seat. If you can't listen in silence, may I invite you to leave the chamber? Minister McAllister, please continue.
Senator, we are in a period of very significant technological change across a range of fronts, and this is one of them. And the National Electric Vehicle Strategy is this government's response to that. It's a pathway to cut our transport emissions, but it also has 3 objectives which are relevant to the question that you ask. The first is to increase the supply of affordable and accessible EVs. The second is to increase the resources, systems and infrastructure to enable rapid EV uptake. And the third is to encourage increased EV demand. And part of that, Senator, is thinking about waste. I encourage you to go and take a look at the strategy and look at the pros and have a look at the measures that are being proposed and set out in that strategy.
Senator Hughes, this is not your question. I have previously asked the minister to resume her seat. I invited people who could not listen in silence to leave the chamber. That applies to you. Senator Rennick, second supplementary.
Madam President, the former head of the CSIRO, Larry Marshall, said it costs 3 times more to recycle an EV lithium battery than the cost of materials to make it. If this is true, how will the Albanese government ensure that EV batteries can be renewed and recycled cost-effectively and not end up as environmental waste?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, as I indicated in my answer to your first supplementary question, this is an issue that is being considered as part of the National Electric Vehicle Strategy. It's also the case more broadly, of course, that lithium batteries are an increasing feature of our economy. It's not actually just electric vehicles where lithium batteries are used. They're used in a whole range of products, and there are a range of things that we do need to do as a community to make sure that that technology is being used safely. There is, of course, some work being undertaken to ensure that we've got appropriate arrangements to make sure that if there are incidents of any kind relating to lithium batteries, that our first responders are well equipped to deal with it. There are standards being developed through the Building Codes Board. There are a range of things that need to occur to make sure that this technology can be safely and appropriately integrated into the Australian economy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.